For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake Floyd, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about current events. Then we'll discuss financial independence in retirement in honor of Independence Day. Also, multi-year tax minimization strategies, and finally, creating a successful second half in life, your retirement. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions. But of course, the words of wisdom and solid advice. Hey, this morning they're coming from two places. It's Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Jake, I'll start with you. Happy 4th of July weekend. How you doing today?
You know, this is one of my very favorite weekends of the year. I love to celebrate our freedom. And again, to any vets out there listening today, we appreciate you, law enforcement, fire department, military, all you guys. We would not be able to celebrate this without you. We appreciate it. And here's to freedom.
That's right. America 249, as we were discussing off the air, Jake, there are so many countries around the world that are jealous of the freedoms that we have. So do not take that for granted. We celebrate you this weekend. Randy, how are you this weekend?
You know, I'm doing very well, Jeff. I mean, to kind of mirror what Jake said, we live in Battlefield, Lisa and I do.
Right.
And it is aptly named, let me tell you, because it is seriously a battlefield out there, 4th of July. In fact, from our house, you remember the old show, and a lot of people listening to this will remember this, Love American Style?
Oh, yeah.
The cruise ship, they're always blowing up fireworks. That is Battlefield. And it's like you're in a war zone. The smoke is so thick after about 10
you
o'clock.
can't hardly drive after, because everybody's doing their individual fireworks, but then they do a show of fireworks too. Mm-hmm. And so after that, the whole city of Battlefield, like, you have to be careful when you're driving because you can't see more than a few feet in front of your car, you know, so you got to watch what you're doing there. But it makes me smile, though. I think it's, especially in today's day and age where, like you said, Jeff, a lot of people don't value their freedom. It's good to live in an area where people do still, or at least a lot of people do.
Right. Unfortunately, many people take it for granted, but if you travel the world much, you can see that it is a whole different story. They're basically very envious of us. A lot of people do want to come to this country, and I can see why. But off the air, Randy, we were talking about some of the things. You and I are roughly the same age that we did with fireworks, and it is amazing that we got to be this age. So
it is in many cases. Yeah, we used to stick the cherry bombs and the M80s in the mailbox and put them inside coffee cans and watch it blow up. We figured out all sorts of things.
That sounds like a trip to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Could be.
ER is very busy this weekend.
And back in those days, those coffee cans were metal, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
So, I mean, it's literally a frag grenade.
But, you know, that was the thing. The parents just opened the door. Hey, go out, have a good day. We'd ride around on the bikes. And as you said, Randy, fishing with a shotgun down to the lake. There's just so many things that we did and lived to tell about it. But anyway, we're glad everybody's with us this weekend. We hope that you get through the weekend with all your fingers and all your thumbs. And really, again, happy 4th of July. Okay, let's talk about what's going on in current events. I understand the JOLTS report came out last Tuesday. What did it tell us?
Yeah, so basically it's showing that there's still a lot of jobs being created. That's one of the big things that's been hurled at Trump, is saying, hey, all this stuff is that you say is pro-growth is not pro-growth and will lead to job destruction, yada, yada, yada. Well, apparently that's still not true. In fact, Jerome Powell came out on the same day and said that if it wasn't for tariffs, we would have lowered interest rates by now. You know, it just shows that there's a lot of political motivation going on here. I think what's maybe the part that a lot of people are not paying attention to, and the part that Trump sees that a lot of other people don't see, is that he would never say this live, but basically it's okay to have some inflation if we can get the interest on our debt down. And that's really what's at stake here, is by keeping interest rates higher for longer, the U.S. is paying double, triple plus on our debt what most developed nations are paying, even though we have a stronger economy and lower inflation. And so Jerome is, in Jerome's defense, his mandate is maximum employment and price stability, not how much we're paying on our debt, right? Ultimately, you could say, though, that how much we're paying on our debt affects those two things long term in the short term, there's not a direct correlation. So I think the Fed is kind of broken. And Vivek Ramaswamy talked about changing the Fed's mandate to only price stability and kind of reworking what the Fed actually does and how they do it, instead of it being such a central piece of every market-based, capital-based discussion. It would just make it so that we're focused on trying to keep inflation at bay. Arguably, though, that would be still a problem right now because they're trying to keep prices down. Right now, we have about 2% inflation, and we're paying 5% interest on our debt.
Right.
I would rather reverse those numbers. Let's have 5% inflation and pay 2% interest on our debt. That would be a lot healthier for us looking down the road. And I think that's what Trump's trying to accomplish, that a lot of people don't understand why he's so bent on interest rates. It's because we have something like $6 trillion over the next few months that's coming due that we're going to have to refinance at current interest rates. And that's going to be a disaster at these levels because a lot of that debt's going from 1 or 2% to 4.5%, 5%. And so I think that's really the forefront of Trump's frustration. He sent that letter, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Yeah.
He's kind of an open letter, handwritten note to Jay Powell. I think a lot of people don't understand why he's frustrated.
Randy, you were going to say something.
Well, I think we should also visit a couple other factors that are weighing heavily on Trump's thought processes here. Number one, oil prices are down. They're not at all-time lows for the last, since 2014, when we had $26 a barrel oil for a while after it had been to $120 a barrel. But, oil is down in a good price range. It permeates our society as far as making things, all the plastics, and not just oil, but, and gas and diesel, but everything that we make that's got plastic and derivatives thereof, right? So that is pushing inflation down and helping us there. And inflation overall is down to around the 2% mandate. So if we can continue to push that down and we can bring interest rates down, that will start the economy running again, because all of a sudden, if you can get mortgage rates from 7 and 6 or 6.5 to 5 and even 4.5 or 5, now builders will be building houses. People will be able to buy more houses, and the housing industry fuels everything through the economy. So if we can push interest rates down, refinance our debt at a lower rate than where we currently are, grow the economy, and collect more tax revenue as we do that, and then cut spending and add the tariffs that we're going to have to that, we can balance this thing. And that's what he really sees out there. And so Jerome is kind of holding up he's kind of the fly in his ointment.
Yeah. He's the hair in the biscuit, as we say.
That's it. And he's hanging in there.
He's hanging in there. Well, the press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, on Monday, I think, read that note. I remembered it said, "Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation." Well, I don't know that there's no inflation, but I think Jerome Powell was worn out his welcome, and those other governors or whatever they're called there at the Fed are, saying, if I were the Fed chairman, I would lower the interest rates.
And I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, the main reason is they're signaling to Donald Trump, hoping that they're going to get picked for the top job there in the future. And he may, like we talked about last week, he may elect a shadow Fed chair here in the next little bit by giving them the nod early to have some influence on policy. On the subject of Carolyn Levitt, on America's birthday weekend, can we just say thank God for women like Caroline Levitt? She is absolutely amazing. I don't know that we've ever in the history of our nation had a better press secretary. She gets all kinds of awful things said to her, and she doesn't back down 1 millimeter.
Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd at Floyd Financial Group. Our program, of course, is called Show Me the Money. If anything resonates with you, give us a call here. Ask for your Floyd Financial Group retirement review at no cost and no obligation. We'll talk to you about how these current events will affect you and the markets and your journey towards a confident retirement. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. You can call this weekend, leave your name, telephone number. Ashley will call you back during the week and set up an appointment for you to come in and sit down, have a casual conversation with Randy and Jake here at Floyd Financial Group. 417-889-7233. Speaking of rate cuts, I understand that the Fed's Kashkari is predicting that the first rate cuts are not going to happen until September, and then he sees 2 more rate cuts this year. I'm not so sure about that. We expected many rate cuts before this, but all I hear is we're going to hold steady. What do you guys think?
I think it's going to depend a lot on whether Trump does go ahead and elect this shadow Fed chair. The odds of even a potential July cut are starting to tick up a little bit, but I think we're definitely going to cut in September. What happens after that is going to be determined by who's in power and whether the sentiment is to please Trump or to please Powell. I think it's possible that we could have a cut in September and then 2 more after that. That would get us more into balance. We'd be at 3.5% at that point. I think we really should be more like 3%. Even at 3%, that would take the brakes off the economy in a big way, which would really help fuel growth, which fuels tax revenue, which fuels a lot of things. I think it's likely we could have 3 cuts this year. I think that's possible. And I would say, if I had to pick, I would say that's what's going to happen.
Let's talk about tariffs a little bit. Trump's 90-day liberation tariff pause expires on July 9th, and failure to strike a new deal with the EU or Japan or others, that could double the tariffs and shake up the markets. What do you think about that? Do you think that there is a chance that we're not going to get what we wanted with these tariffs and the markets are going to suffer?
So Trump's been really downplaying the July 9th deadline and has basically said, to quote him, he said, we can do whatever we want. Yeah. Basically, don't focus on July 9th. We may give extensions to those who are in good faith trying to make a deal and that kind of thing. So I have a feeling he's going to try to gloss over that date. The market may not allow him to gloss over that date. I would just say that the only one, in my opinion, that really matters is China. We saw last week where Canada was trying to flex on the U.S. and saying that they're going to put this digital services tax on us. And Trump said, fine, no more negotiations. We're going to leave all the tariffs on. And then over the weekend, this Carney guy comes back to the table sniveling and says, oh, okay, we'll get rid of that new tax there. We're not going to do that. And the market really didn't care at all about that. The market didn't go up or down on either one of those newses. So I think there's a lot of numbness to tariffs. I think that it will not be the case with China, but pretty much everybody else, I think the market will be pretty numb to at this point.
I also think that we should point something out here, Jeff. The thing that probably is the most different about Trump and all the other presidents and diplomats, many times this stuff is all done behind the scenes. But he just kind of lays it all out there for the public to see. This negotiation process is no different than it's been before when all this was done behind the scenes over 18 months. We just didn't get the blow-by-blow. Here, we're getting the blow-by-blow as how this is playing out. And, I really love watching the process myself.
Well, as Americans, we should be entitled to watch the process. The transparency where there's usually opacity is really, that should be shocking, that we're shocked by how much we can see. And he's not doing anything revolutionary here, really. He's just saying, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it. A lot of people are confused by a lot of the things he's doing. They should go read his book. He's literally walking through his playbook of how he does deals. I mean, if you go read Art of the Deal, which is loosely based off of Sun Tzu's Art of War, but applied in a business way. He's walking right down what he said he would do, which you should do in the Art of the Deal. There's people who say, well, he says one thing and then he does something else. Well, yeah, he's working the deal.
And here's the other thing I would say, too, and there would be people that might disagree with this, but I don't think very many would if they have really paid attention to anything. We are dealing from a position of extreme strength, and the rest of the world really can't survive without us. In fact, what they should be doing is sending us cards saying, thank you very much for giving us the life we have. Because without us, most of these third world countries would still be third world countries.
That's right. We're talking with Randy and Jake Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about the market, the economy, and current events. Again, if you'd like to come in and sit down and talk with Randy and Jake here at Floyd Financial Group, our phone number 417-889-7233. Come and have a casual conversation. It's like talking to a relative in the financial services business. There's no cost, no obligation, and certainly no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. Again, not going to cost you a dime. 417-889-7233. You can find out more about our firm online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Randy and Jake, let's take a break. We come back here on Show Me the Money. We're going to be talking about financial independence in retirement in honor of Independence Day when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about financial independence in retirement. What does that mean, Jeff?
Exactly. It means not being dependent on anybody for your finances, and we're celebrating our independence this weekend, so I thought we would talk about financial independence in retirement. where you no longer rely on work or others to meet your financial needs. Now, to get that, it does require a mix of strategic planning, little discipline, and some smart decision making. So we're going to go down the list here. So let's start with creating a sustainable withdrawal strategy. Randy and Jake, we've talked about 4%. They call it a rule. It's not a rule. It's a suggestion, I think, and many times it's not a good suggestion.
Right.
So how do we figure out how much we can take out of our retirement nest egg?
Yeah, so there's a lot in that question. When we look at people and we sit down with them, there's so many parts to that. Number one, we have to figure out, what do they expect from retirement life? What is their lifestyle going to be? What are they looking to do? What are they looking to accomplish? Also, how much money have they saved? What's possible? Also, we have to look at their risk tolerance. How much risk can they stand versus also what is their risk capacity? What is their capacity in their finances to actually take risk? You know, all of these things come into play. So as we are sitting and really getting to know people early on, that helps us to determine the different tools we may use to set up a withdrawal strategy for them. So it may be we would use bonds, we use stocks, we use money market accounts, we could use annuities in some cases, we could use municipal bonds. So there can be so many combinations. But again, it boils down to risk tolerance, capacity for risk, how much income do you need, how much do you have in your savings, will help us to determine what that withdrawal strategy looks like and what that baseline is. So, you know, the 4% rule basically was set up to say, hey, we can set up 4% and they will adjust for inflation on an annual basis. So if we're at 4%, next year it might be 4.1 or 4.2, and then we adjust that looking forward. Normally speaking, we would say this, that somewhere between 4 and 5 or maybe 5.5% of a client's nest egg is kind of where we live. It just depends on the situation with the client and how much money they actually need. Early on, sometimes people say, well, you know what? I want more money now. I know that when I'm 80, I won't be spending as much. So let's build something with a little heavier spending now and a little less later in life.
Right. We've got our go-go years, our slow-go years, and then our no-go years. I guess the slow-go years would probably be 80. But Randy, you and me, pretty good shape. I think when we're 80, we're still going to be buying bicycles and so forth. What do you think?
That's my plan.
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape here. So the 4% rule is just a starting point, but again, it depends on risk tolerance, risk capacity. So let's move on to the next one about achieving financial independence, and that is going to be delaying Social Security if possible. So can you lay that out for us? There are basically 3 ages that people talk about taking Social Security. Many people want to delay it until 70. Can it always be delayed until 70? What are the circumstances where it just is not going to work that way?
Jake famously said years ago, if you can tell me the last day you're going to be living on the planet, I can tell you the absolute perfect day to take Social Security.
Sure.
Well, most of us can't tell that day, and honestly, I probably wouldn't want to know that day.
Well, of course not. No, I wouldn't either.
For sure.
Yeah.
But delaying to age 70 is what most financial planners will tell you because that gives you the maximum benefit, right? But you can start as early as 62. Full retirement age for most people out there is somewhere between 66 and 8 months and 67 right now to get full retirement benefits. But you can delay past that to age 70, and you get an 8% simple increase those last 2.5, 3 years that you're going to have between 67 and 70. But is there any right time? It just depends on a person's health. It depends on their goals. You know, I have some people right now that are working in one of the things they're going to do is turn on Social Security early while they work part-time to pay down some debt they want to get rid of before they actually fully retire. There's just a number of things to consider when you're looking at taking Social Security. One of the things that we like to do, again, is once we get to know people and we figure out what it is they're trying to accomplish, what kind of income stream they're going to need, that will help us to determine what money we use when, and if we do, in fact, delay Social Security, or do we start it now, or do we build a strategy that says, okay, we know in 2.5 years we're going to turn this on for the wife, and then 2.5 years later we're going to turn it on for the husband, or it could be the opposite of that. It just depends on each individual couple or client as to what they really need. And so Social Security is just one of those things that I hate to call it a football item, but it kind of is. We have to figure out exactly how to design the kick that's right for each client.
Right. Achieving financial independence in retirement. That's our topic here with Randy and Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Randy, the next one should be rather simplistic or obvious, but still a lot of people don't do it, and that is to eliminate or minimize debt. So let's talk about that. Now, there's good debt and then there's bad debt. I think most of the debt is bad debt. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, if you got a mortgage with an ultra low interest rate, especially now, I don't think I would pay off many mortgages unless you're just getting really close and you don't have a whole lot remaining. And what I mean by that is if you've got a $200,000 mortgage financed at 3% right now, do I want to pull $200,000 out of a retirement account, pay the taxes of who knows what it is with your extra income? It might be 30%, and pay off a mortgage of a couple $100,000. I don't think I want to do that because not only did I take the money out and I don't have an earning for me, but I also paid that 30% tax burden. So if you got an ultra low mortgage and I can outperform that or most likely outperform it with growth inside the market, I want to do that. I would also say this. Many times one of the big expenses people have in retirement is they have to buy a car every once in a while. And so they'll come in and say, hey, you don't want to buy this $70,000 pickup, so I want to take it out of my retirement account. Well, I say, well, if you combine that with your regular income plus the $70,000 out of your retirement account, it's going to cost you $85,000 to buy that. Let's reconsider how we might do this and look at our tax brackets that we're falling into versus maybe paying a little interest on a car or a vehicle for a period of time. Because what I really want to do is make sure we have as much money working for us as we can at any one time. And we also want to make sure that we're not paying any more in taxes than we absolutely need to. When we get into situations where it makes sense to eliminate debt is if we got high interest credit cards and things of that nature. Yes, we want to get rid of those. But if we're sitting here on something where we owe $10,000 on it and it's costing us $1,000 a month, it's a no-brainer to pay off that debt and get rid of that $1,000 a month cash flow problem. So there's kind of another vast equation that every family is different when they walk in here as far as eliminating debt or debt minimization. We do want to do that. Yes, I want the big picture to be, yes, we want to do that, but we want to do it in a smart, advantageous way to the client.
Right, and as to your comment about credit cards, 28%, 29% is rather common, so use them as a convenience, but be sure to pay them off each and every month before you get the bill. And you were talking about Lisa, where she'll use a credit card and get 20% off, and then less than 60 seconds later, she runs the debit card and pays it all off. That is a smart girl. She got a lot of strategic thinking going on there. We're talking about how to achieve financial independence in retirement with Randy and Jake Floyd here, Floyd Financial Group. Next one I want to talk about, Randy, is optimizing taxes with income planning. We're going to go into depth on that here in a little bit. But what are some of the things that we would want to be concerned with here?
Yeah, so we want to look at the taxability of each account that we may draw from. And we kind of alluded to this in this previous segment here, talking about let's be smart about what we pay off first and how we pay off debt. And if we got something that's got a major payment on it with a low balance, we need to do that first. But when we look at the taxability of income, we want to say, okay, does it make sense for me now to use some non-taxable money blended with taxable money? Do I have a brokerage account that's really, like a non-retirement account that I want to take money out of? Because I know I may only pay capital gains tax on that, or if I stay in the 12% tax bracket and it's a long-term capital gain, I may not pay any tax on that. Also, we need to look at dividend payments and the taxability of those, qualified versus non-qualified dividends. So when we look at optimizing how much money you get for the money you actually withdraw, because we want to be able to have the maximum spendable amount that we can, we really are always looking to try to keep people within the 12% tax bracket. So the first bracket on the first $23,000 for a married couple is 10%. $23,000 through about $97,000 is at 12%. So $97,000 taxable really means closer to $127,000 gross, because the standard marital deduction for a couple right now is around $30,000. So you take 127 minus 30, leaves them at 97. So we have a lot of room to work in there. But again, depending on how each client is structured, how many dollars in Roth IRAs they may have, how many dollars in IRAs or 401k versus taxable accounts like CDs and money markets, or if they have municipal bond funds and things like that that are paying with tax-free income. There's just so many parts to that. Again, we always go back to we have to have a plan that's unique to each individual or each individual couple as a client.
Let's talk about generating passive income in retirement. Randy, what are some of the things that we could use to generate income that we don't have to go to work for? In other words, sort of mailbox money.
Yeah, mailbox money is good stuff. So there's dividends and interest. There's a lot of people that have rental income. There's annuities. There's royalties from business, or maybe you sold a business and you keep a partial interest and somebody else runs it for a while, or maybe you get paid out over a few years from a business. There's just a lot of things to consider when you get ready to retire. But generating passive income is what we do in retirement. So we're going to do that generally through something that's connected or is the actual stock or bond market or something that's tied to that. We do have quite a few people that have retirement income from rental property, but I will tell you more and more I find that there are people that say, you know what, I've been in the rental business and now that I'm retired, I don't want to carry that forward. Right. So there's other opportunities there to take rental income and still defer the taxes and come up with some income through DSTs and through opportunity zone plans and things like that. So a lot of things to talk about there, but those are just some of the different things that we can use.
Right. DST meaning Delaware Statutory Trust, and it's a way for you to own fractionally real estate in other markets. If you've sold a property, you want to avoid the income taxes, DST might be an answer for you. Let's talk a little bit about dividend-paying stocks. Do they really make that much difference these days?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. We have high dividend-paying stocks. We have growth stocks that are generally not going to pay dividends. And then we have some special things today. We have some income funds out here that are basically what they do is they put a basket of stocks together. Then they sell a call option on that basket of stocks. It's a safe way to get income today. Now, you have the stock and you own it. You also may get partial appreciation from the market. However, if the stock really appreciates, you may have to sell that stock, but you're going to sell that at a profit, and you got paid to do it up front anyway. So it's a pretty good way to get some good dividends and interest. And I have a considerable amount of money myself in some of those, and they're paying right now really good dividends. So if that's something that you want to talk about, give us a holler. We'll talk about that specifically.
And one of the things that can really derail your retirement plan and get you off your course for financial independence is going to be healthcare costs in retirement. So let's talk about that a little bit. Medicare Advantage plans, HSAs, long-term care insurance. How do we attack healthcare in paying for that so it doesn't jeopardize our financial independence?
Yeah, so I think for most of us near retirement, there's some pretty good options out there for what I would call acute care. Things we have a heart attack and we recover from it. We have maybe a bout with cancer, we recover from that. The long-term care issue is probably the biggest thing. We have Advantage plans from Medicare, which basically you pay no premium for that except your Part B Medicare that you pay there. Then we have the supplement plans where you'll pay Part B Medicare plus an insurance premium to have that. A lot of people like that flexibility because they can use any doctor or hospital that takes Medicare versus the Advantage plan may be limited to a HMO, a health maintenance organization, or a PPO, a preferred provider organization. But there's lots of good plans out there for that right now. But the long-term care part of that, where we end up having a chronic illness that we're not going to get over, that's going to be a drain on the finances long-term looking forward. So there's basically 4 ways to pay for long-term care. That is out of the hip pocket, which is probably not the best way. If you're a veteran, there may be some veterans benefits that could be available through aid and attendance to help offset some of that cost. There is traditional long-term care insurance. There are now long-term care insurance plans that are on life insurance chassis as well as annuity chassis rather than just the old type where you paid so much a month for a benefit, and those things generally priced us out of the market over time. So if you're looking for something that's stable and a little better in the long-term care arena, we can talk about that, and I would recommend that we do have that conversation. Need to have it with everybody about how they feel about long-term care and what they want to do there. But long-term care is the biggest drain, or can be, and that's something that we should talk about. And there's lots of options today, and it's always part of the planning process as we go through it with each client.
Right, and as we wrap up this discussion about achieving financial independence, I think the old standby is always the old JOB. It's having a job, and I go into my Ace Hardware all the time, and the people in there, they're 75, maybe pushing 80 years old, and maybe I want to get a faucet or something. They have done this over their period of time on this earth, and they've got a lot of great information for me. They've helped me so many times. So even if you make $1,000 a month, that can really add up over 10 to 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about financial independence with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group in honor of Independence Day. If you have questions about our topic today, you want to talk to Randy or Jake about financial independence, and you've got some other questions about your journey towards a confident retirement, we are offering this Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review, a casual conversation here at Floyd Financial Group. It's a no-tie zone, no cost, no obligation, no judgment. All you've got to do is call 417-889-7233 to get it. 417-889-7233. Again, it's not going to cost you a dime. Make that call this weekend. This one call really could make all the difference. Randy and Jake, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about creating a successful second act in life, your retirement, when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about creating a second act in life. That is, when you retire, what are you going to do?
That's right. You're retiring from something, but you got to retire to something. And a fulfilling retirement really requires more than, I think, just money. It's rediscovering purpose and staying engaged and living with intention. So let's talk a little bit about that. Randy, I think so many people go into retirement and they think, well, I'm not going to have to go to work. I'm going to sleep late. I'm going to do what I want. Maybe there's a few chores around the house. The bushes need trimming, the closets need to be cleaned out. But that takes them a couple of weeks, and then it's like, now what? What is your advice for people? You don't want to be your wife or your spouse's shadow either. What do you tell people who say, Randy, I just don't know what to do in retirement, or those spouses who say he or she's driving me crazy?
Yeah, we see this happen a lot. In fact, I will tell you, Jeff, a quick story. My brother-in-law was an orthodontist for over 40 years. And so when he retired, his total identity was wrapped up in being an orthodontist. And so when all of a sudden he was retired and he wasn't needed at the office anymore, and I would say this, I grew up, in Bradleyville, and we did everything. So if the brakes needed changing on the car, we did it.
Sure.
If we needed a new transmission in the car, we figured out how to chain it up to a tree and use a come-along, we call it, a hand winch, and pull it out of there and do it. So we did everything that way. So when I got to a point to where I was able to not do those things, I just don't do those things. Okay? Not that I'm too good to, I just don't want to. And so Taylor was kind of the same way. He was one of those guys, he always made a good living, and so when it came time to do things, he just always hired everything done, right? So he really wasn't a honeydew guy, and he didn't really have a lot of things outside of his work, and so it was a real challenge for him to retire. Sometimes we have people come in and they say, well, you know what? My idea of retirement is I just want to not have to drive to work anymore. I want to come home. I want to sit on the back porch and drink coffee and watch my cattle grow, watch the grass grow, or do some gardening, or, and some people say, hey, I'm ready to travel. And we have some people that'll go on the road for the first 5 years of retirement. They'll buy a fifth wheel trailer or buy a motor home and go out and do that sort of thing. But I think what we're getting at here is what makes a person excited about getting up each and every morning. What's going to make you feel? I think people need to accomplish things to feel good. I just do. And so what is that going to be? Is it volunteering for you? Is it mentoring somebody? Maybe you want to have a second career. A lot of people do. I have some people in here that have 3 retirements because they just retired and retired and retired.
Yeah.
And so, as one guy said, to have a purpose is to have fuel to move. And I think everybody needs something to look forward to and move toward. Because if you don't, all of a sudden, you're going to be sitting there on your own and be on the couch too much, and that ain't going to be good. Because the couch, while it's comfortable, when you get up, sometimes it's not as comfortable.
Yeah, that's right. And as your pastor said one time, when you sit on the couch all the time, you just get weird.
Yeah.
And I guess it was because you're just watching too many weird things on TV. But, we're going to give you some tips on how to retire successfully here, how to redefine yourself. But let's talk a little bit about how not to retire. And you talked about the motorhome. I always love your stories. Can you repeat that again about the fellow who retired and he got a motorhome? And I'll let you finish that story.
Yeah, this has been several years back, and it's when it was kind of a new idea to put a satellite dish on your motorhome.
Yeah.
And you could then use HughesNet or whatever it is used across the countryside to be able to get on your laptop and access the internet and that sort of thing. This couple, they were retiring. They'd bought a really nice, beautiful motorhome, and so he was telling me all about it. And he said, yeah, and I got my satellite dish up on there. And he says, so now I can get up every morning and I can access the web and I can trade my stocks, And he's beaming. And his wife says, then I'm not going. Is what she said. So it's a different deal for each person as to what really makes them tick. I think one of the biggest things that we come across, especially if we have single people, maybe a spouse has predeceased or something like that, is these people get really lonely because they had that person as their partner. Their kids are doing their own thing, and they have kids, and their kids have kids, and grandkids and great-grandkids, and all that. So people live busy lives, and so all of a sudden they find themselves disconnected, and they're looking for someone to connect with again. I mean, I had a lady just last week that basically came in and said, I have a sister. I would love to travel with her, but she won't. Sometimes it's as simple as going back and reconnecting with old friends, or maybe joining a social group, or do something more at church. If you're going to church, join some type of a group there where you can maybe volunteer and be of help. The other thing is, most grandparents love their grandkids. We always say, the kids are great, but when it comes to the grandkids, you're chopped liver. That's kids,
right.
You're just, it's not going to be the same. And that's good for the grandkids as well. And that gives the grandparents some real joy to watch. They get to live vicariously again through that grandchild, right?
And I've got a grandchild who is 3 years old at this point, and I'm planning to spend a lot of time with him when I get a little bit older. And he likes to play with his little baseball bat, and he knows that Grandpa has a little baseball background. So Grandpa comes over and he's saying, let's go Dodgers and all that. He's really excited about that. So I'm looking forward to establishing a relationship with Gavin, and we're going to go to Dodger games together and just all sorts of stuff. I've got a friend who's a psychologist, Dr. Richard Himmer, who has a podcast called How Not to Retire, and you can find it if you search for podcasts out there. But Dr. Himmer talks about reestablishing communication. You've gone to work for 30, 35 years. You were away from your spouse for 10 hours a day. You've forgotten how to communicate. And he talks about one of his clients who was an officer in the military. He retired finally. He and his wife bought a motorhome. They headed out. They were going to go all across the country, and they headed out from North Carolina. Well, by the time they got to Texas, both of them had hired divorce attorneys, and they were turning around and coming back to North Carolina because they just did not know how to communicate.
Right.
Do you find that with couples who have been married for 30, 40 years that sometimes they don't know how to communicate with each other because they've sort of built separate lives?
Yeah, sometimes that's the case for sure, where mom had a career, dad had a career, and they met on nights and weekends, and that was kind of how that worked. But yeah, we do see some of that. I think that it can also be a time. One of the most favorite times I have with my wife right now is in the morning. We go out on the back porch and drink coffee and just kind of listen to the birds and watch the sun come up, and and we'll do that for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's one of our favorite times. We've tried to kind of build what I would call a flexible routine. Lisa knows that most mornings when I get up, I am going to want to do some type of exercise. I'm going to want to go ride a bike. I'm going to swim. I'm going to run. I'm going to walk. I'm going to do something. And she's kind of the same way now. We've gotten to the point to where, we like to do that. And then Lisa, of course, her mom and sister live here close, and so she's pretty close to them. And so they go have their girls' days out, and they get their toes done and their hair done, buy clothing and share clothing, and all those different things that they do. We're very involved also in church, so we have quite a lot of input from people that we've known there now for 12, 15 years. And then we have a few clients that actually, over the last 10 or 15 years, have come from church, and so I end up playing golf with a couple of my buddies from church that are also clients. And so there's a lot of things that people can do, but I think it's just important that people stay connected.
And to your point about being physically active, you got up about 4 o'clock this morning. That's what your routine is, Randy. And I thought about you. I woke up at 5:30 this morning, and I got out of bed to go to the bathroom, and I had to hold on to the walls to not fall down to get into the bathroom. And I thought, well, Randy's been up for about an hour and a half. But you do a lot of physical activity in the morning. We used to talk about this all the time. But this physical activity that you started, I remember it started with a bike ride with Jake. And you went out there on the bike, and you went about, it was a mile or so, and you said, Jake, I don't think I can do this anymore. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, it was June 2018 that Jake says, Dad, you ought to get a bike. Now, Jake is a cycling monster. When he's training and he's doing it, I mean, the kid is crazy strong on a bike. So anyway, I've been sitting behind the desk and doing what I did for a living for 30, 35 years. And so I get on this bike, and about 2 miles down the road on a flat road, I'm like, I'm not sure I can do this, Jake. And he says, oh, come on, Dad. So anyway, I think we rode maybe 3 or 3.5 miles that first ride.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't long. He was riding back over from his house to my house, meeting me in the morning. And he said, let's go over by this place called Rivercut. I said, there's a huge hill over there. He says, I know, but so anyway, I started riding. Of course, that's been since June of 2018. And since that time, to kind of show you how it would be, I've done a half Ironman, which is a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike, and a half marathon, all tied together. And I've done several shorter triathlons than that and some running events. And I mean, like this morning, I got up and took a short ride, 15 miles.
Wow.
This morning. And then, I'll take 25-mile rides a lot of mornings now. Just one of those things that I love it, and I love doing it early in the morning because that's really a peaceful time. Most people don't get up at 4.
No.
And some people say, have you lost your mind? What is wrong with you? But once you kind of get going, it's really a great time.
Again, if you would like to talk about your second act in retirement with Randy and Jake here at Floyd Financial Group, call us right now, 417-889-7233. Leave your name, telephone number. Ashley will call you back. We'll set you up with an appointment to talk with Randy or Jake here at Floyd Financial Group to not only talk about the non-financial side of retirement, but the financial side in your journey towards a confident and a prosperous retirement. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. 417-889-7233. Online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Let's take a break, Randy and Jake. When we come back, we're going to be talking about our 5-step financial planning process and more when Show Me the Money continues, right here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready to climb a mountain of financial know-how? Good, because it's time for more Show Me the Money with your financial Sherpas, Randy and Jake Floyd.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about our 5-step process that really applies to any financial decision, but the 5-step process to help you get retired and stay that way.
That's right. And for those people who do call 417-889-7233, and they're wondering, well, if I have the initial conversation with these gentlemen and I go forward, what's going to happen? So this is the 5-step process that should explain it all. Right at the very beginning, when you have the first meeting with you guys, what is the first thing that you do?
Well, the first thing we want to do, Jeff, is get to know that person or that couple and find out what their needs are, what their goals are. Really figure out, that gives us a general direction as to what they're looking to do in retirement. Plus, we just want to learn about them. You can't go in and take one size shoe into a room and expect it to fit everybody. And so it's the same way here. We're going to have to meet people where they are and understand their unique circumstances. And that's a very important part of getting a retirement plan started.
So this is what we call the discovery process. And as you said, it's not only just about what you have, but who you are as a person. What are some of the questions or some of the things that come up in this discovery process?
Yeah, for sure. So, we're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about, you're never supposed to talk about religion, money, and politics, right?
Right.
Let me just tell you.
What else is there to talk about?
People always want to talk about those things. And
it
that's okay.
just comes up. Yeah, sure.
So we're okay with that. I think that, during this process too. So we're learning about children. We're going to learn about where they worked and how we grew up, where we worked, how we worked, gives us our perspective in life, right? I mean, it's what we have to draw from, our experience.
Environment.
And so we want to know about them and what's important to them. And hey, do you want to spend a lot more money on the front end traveling while you're you're young and you're still good looking, or do you want to wait till you're till you're later in life and you're really good looking?
Still good looking. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So that's the discovery process. And I understand sometimes, Randy, that can take a while with you because they'll bring up a name. You know that person. You bring up a name. They know that person. And you have all of this stuff. And then it gets to a point where there's sort of this awkward silence. And then somebody says, well, I guess it's time to get down to talking about this scary money stuff, huh?
That's exactly what happens for sure. I've been bumping around with other people on this planet for a long time now. So
right. There's no reason that this process has to be scary. There's no reason that money has to be scary. I mean, that was that one person who told you that it was time to talk about the scary money stuff, but I'm sure that once you explained it all to her, that it took the scary out of it. So we're talking about the 5 steps here with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. So the first one in the first meeting is going to be discovery. We're going to find find out who you are and what you want to be in retirement, sort of lifestyle planning. The next one has to do with analysis. What is involved with that step?
Sure. So the analysis part is they come in and they say, hey, we're wanting to do some retirement planning. And so we're going to say, well, when do you think you want to do that? And what does retirement mean to you? And do you want to fully retire? Because today we have people that end up working part-time for quite some time after they leave their main job. And so at this point in time, we're going to basically be looking at their numbers, talking about Social Security, and helping them kind of get an idea of where they are, right now today. And do we need more time? Are we ready now? Once in a while, I'll have somebody come in and we'll get to the end of like our first or maybe our second meeting. I'll look at them and say, honestly, if you were to stop working, you would have as much money or maybe slightly more than you have now.
Wow.
Only you wouldn't have to report anywhere. They go, really? Anyway, that's what it's about. It's about basically just assessing where you are, where we're going, and how soon we're going to get there if we're not quite there. And then we use just a variety of tools and assessments that are out there to really determine what's best for that client and their particular case.
So the first one is discovery, the second is analysis, and then if the light is still green and we move forward, then comes the planning aspect. What's involved with that?
Sure. So when we do planning, like we've already talked about earlier here, during discovery and analysis, we have learned that not everybody is the same. Imagine that. So we are looking at what that person or that couple's unique situation is and how to develop a plan that not only gives them the income that they need for their lifetime, that meets them with their risk tolerance and gives them that feeling that, hey, everything is going to be all right. And we use all kinds of proven strategies and effective solutions that over the years we have used over and over and over, and we blend those in a custom fashion for each couple. And no two are exactly the same, ever. They're uniquely theirs based on their situation.
And in the earlier part of our show, we talked about when it's time to look for a new financial advisor, and I want to talk about this in relation to this planning aspect of this. If you go through this and you present this out to the people or your clients, do they have the opportunity to chime in and say, well, I don't quite understand this, or I slightly disagree with this? I mean, really, this is a give and take situation. It isn't just do what I say.
It absolutely is. So it's kind of like if you were going to go build a house, and you go to the architect and say, hey, I want this, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want that, and then he comes back with the initial plan, and you go, okay, I like the number of bedrooms, I like the swimming pool out back, I like the sauna, I like the full-time maid's quarters over there. I'm just kidding. Whatever it is, but I would really like to change this, that, make the pool bigger, make this bedroom smaller, make that shower larger. Those are the things that, yes, during planning, there's a lot of flexibility in here. But we have to have a place to start from, and we're going to start with a sound base, and then from there we'll make the tweaks that are appropriate for each client.
Okay, so again, that theory is it's your money, let's keep it that way. You always have a say at Floyd Financial Group in your financial plan. So next one on the list is going to be implementation. We've decided that the light is still green, we want to move forward. So how do you go about implementing all of these plans?
Sure thing. One of the things I would like to say on the planning stage here is this. We don't ever put the big thumb on people and say, all right, are you going to do this or not? It just never works that way.
Right.
What ends up happening is we've had a conversation. Okay, so what's the next step to get started? Well, many times that leads us to number 4, which is the implementation process. Sometimes people are a little bit ahead of where they need to be to maybe change anything. Maybe they got all their money going into a 401k or something, but generally it's implementation time. That's item number 4 or step 4. And once we've decided to do that, what we're going to do is really make sure they understand exactly what we're going to do, and then we're going to take over and just make it easy. So if there's phone calls that need to be made sometimes to 401k companies, or if we need to go out online to transfer and rearrange monies, we can do that. We'll just make it easy for them, and we'll take them through the process to get it implemented. Whether that's immediately or if it's somewhere down the road, we'll have a plan in place to systematically build that retirement plan to its fruition when they actually pull the plug and walk out the door for the last time.
And if somebody is moving to you from another financial advisor, do you help with that breaking up? I mean, do you help with a Dear John letter? How does it work?
We will, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes people say, well, I've been with this person for a very long time, and they've really been good. The thing that I would always say to people is everything has a season. When we are just in life, we have a season, right? So we're kids, we grow up, we get married, we have kids, they have kids, we become grandparents. And, we run through different seasons in life. And so it's the same way in your financial life. When you first go to work, you don't have many assets. After you've been working a while, you start to develop assets and all this stuff. You get a house, maybe you get another house, maybe you build a business. So life is always changing. And so this is just generally another step in a life change. And so, yes, we can help with a breakup letter if people want to do that, by all means. But we're going to make it easy. And, once in a while, we lose a client here. Sometimes it's because people move. Sometimes it's because their circumstances have changed, or maybe their brother-in-law got in the business, or, whatever it is. We're here to help any way we can with implementation.
So it's business, it's not personal. And the final step here is going to be review. What is involved with the review process, and how often do you do it?
So the review process is different for each client based on what they really think their requirements might be. So a lot of times we're going to have 90-day reviews after we first set somebody up, and maybe then another 90-day review. And then after a little while, they're going to say, well, maybe we can go 6 months. And we'll say, fine, that's okay with us. We have some people that we've had as clients now for going on 20 years, and we see them once a year, but they also know this. They can call us any day and reach us and have a conversation. And maybe it's about, hey, I heard this. Is that true? Tell me what you know about that. I mean, I heard so-and-so, did such and such or whatever. How does that affect my portfolio? How does that affect my income? Is that going to affect my income? Is that going to affect my portfolio? They know they can do that stuff at any time. Also, if they want a snapshot of all their accounts, we can put that together for them at any time. But the biggest thing is we want people to stay connected to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and feel connected to their money and us as their advisor, so that we're all on the same page. I just think that's so important. I just can't tell you how important that truly is to each and every individual. And I know the people listening out here that meet with us all the time are going, yeah, I typically always feel better and connected after I've sat with Randy or Jake.
And Randy, before we go today, I think there are some people who are probably listening to this going, well, I don't have enough money to deal with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. They only deal with millionaires. Is that the case?
No, that is not the case. We don't have to have $1 million to come here. We like to meet people where they are. There are certain levels of assets that make it harder for us to deal with. If we're looking to implement a truly comprehensive financial plan, we can't do it with, $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000.
Right, of course.
It takes more money than that for us to even build portfolios properly. But I would say this, don't let your lack, or what you feel might be your lack of assets, deter you from giving us a call. We can certainly have a conversation and help guide and direct you down the path that'll maybe get you to where we can help you one day, or we can say, hey, we'll help you kind of negotiate where you are a little bit, so that in the future, maybe we can work together as you get toward retirement.
So don't be afraid to call. As Randy has said many times in this program, we will meet you where you are. So the 5-step process at Floyd Financial Group is discovery, analysis, planning, implementation, and then finally review. If all this sounds good to you and you want to get on a path towards a confident and possibly a prosperous retirement, we invite you to give us a call here and request your no cost, no obligation, no judgment Floyd Financial Group financial review. It's not going to cost you a dime. The price is right. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. Feel free to give that number a call this weekend while you're thinking about it. Leave your name and telephone number. Ashley give you a call back on Monday, set you up an appointment with Randy and Jake. Or, of course, if you call during the week, you can talk with Ashley. 417-889-7233. Give that call this week, and as I said, it's not going to cost you a dime. You can also find out more about the firm and request your appointment online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. It's FloydFinancialGroup.com. For Randy and Jake, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week with another edition of Show Me the Money right here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and are not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an investment